Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Miracle Sims, and you're watching the GSL Talk Show. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with Captain Kirk. And friends, if you're in America, you might want to grab your pens and papers because he's going to be sharing some gems that you do not want to miss. All right, so stay tuned.
It's a miracle, baby. Shot chill. Miracle Sims, let's go. Yeah. It's a miracle, baby. That I'm not the type of girl that goes. Yeah. It's a miracle, baby. Shot you wishing I would have a one night affair.
Welcome back to the GSL Talk Show. I am here with Captain Kirk. How you doing?
I'm doing well, very well.
Good, good. I know you shared that you were in the Army, so thank you for your service and everything like that.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. And yeah, tell us where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
I was born in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I was educated in Rapid City at South Dakota Tech. I have a degree in engineering. I spent a couple of years with Shell Oil Company. I learned quite a bit about oil and government interventions. And from there, I decided, well, I don't like sitting behind a desk that much. So if I'm going to sit behind a desk, I want to have students out there that I'm watching. And that's what I ended up doing. Better part of my life, I've been teaching mathematics, but occasionally I've had a chance to teach civics. And that's been very enlightening. I always say to people, if you think the younger generation is hopeless, that's because we haven't given them a whole lot of hope. When they see a model of love, courage, then they run to it. They're very open to living a life of more purpose. We just simply have to give them something more than a job. No. We've all been called to a higher purpose. And most people don't ever find out what it was. They never really asked the right question. They didn't go to the right source to find the solution. And they end up living a lot of empty lives. From working in Colorado for a while with Shell Oil Company, and then started teaching in Colorado. But for the last 37 years of my life, I've lived here in California, specifically in Riverside, California. And it's there that I really have stepped across the line and begun to really understand much about what's going on with this country and what a special place it is. We have tremendous problems, but we were gifted with a form of government that is truly unusual, and nobody's been able to duplicate it. The problem is, Miracle, is that too many people have forgotten it. And it's not taught in our schools. I recognize our schools are government schools. So why would government schools be teaching you how to control government? Not likely. Well, when I had a chance to teach civics, I did. And I found the students very receptive to what I was saying. And I would often say I'd much rather speak to a bunch of 20-year-olds than a bunch of 60-year-olds. They're much more receptive to what the truth is, because they don't have to give up 4 decades of the way they've been living, like a lot of us do. But anyway, I've always been a very curious person. And back in Colorado, I was with my wife one evening, 2 o'clock in the morning, we were heading home. And I made a turn, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, a police officer stopping me at 2 in the morning? I wonder what this is all about. And he pulled me over for a rolling stop. At 2 o'clock in the morning. You don't have anything better to do than to stop me for a rolling stop? I always tell all the audiences, Miracle, I'm a recidivist when it comes to rolling stops. I just can't stop not stopping.
Mm.
So I've gotten these tickets over the years, and I've always been really curious as to, well, wait a minute, where's the money going? Well, it's not going to a super fund to help people who are the victims of reckless driving. No,
Mhm.
it ends up going right into the government. It was kind of like an incentive to go out and write tickets.
Mm.
And so I was curious. I always went to court and always tried to finagle. I was always arguing, and but I was always losing.
Mm.
Mr. Beck, you have anything else to say? Well, no. Well, then pay the fine. But I learned something along the way because I'm curious, Miracle.
Mhm.
Watch this. I was on a jury pool about 10 years ago, and I was sitting right behind the defendant who was defending himself against 17 felonies. And he
Mm.
said something to the judge, and the judge stopped him and said, "Sir, you had a chance to have an attorney. You chose not to have one. Therefore, you're going to have to da, 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 da." And the whole time that he's scolding him in front of all these 60 people, including me, the defendant is shaking his head. Now, he's disagreeing with what the judge is saying, and I think I know what he's disagreeing about. 2 days later, I'm one of the 16 people that are being impaneled on the jury.
Mm.
And the judge went through his standard statements. And when he got done, he said, jury 14 is looking right at me. And he says, "You seem to be having, like, I can tell by your body language, you're having trouble with some of the things that I'm saying." And I said, "Well, yes, I do." He said, "Well, explain it." So for 5 minutes, he allowed me to talk in the courtroom. And I explained exactly what I felt was going on. And there were two really nasty things going on in there. I'm not going to talk about one of them, but the one that got me was, I think I know what's bothering the defendant. 2 days ago, you reprimanded him for being out of line because he wasn't following court rules. But the whole time you were reprimanding, he was shaking his head. And I think I know what was going on. He wants to have an attorney as a counselor. He simply doesn't want to give up his right to defend himself. Because when you have an attorney, you are judged by the court to be incompetent, and you don't talk unless the judge talks to you.
Mm.
You just can't speak.
Mhm.
And the defendant leans way back in his chair and looking at me. Now he's going like this. Yep.
Mm.
So I got done. The judge said, "I think we'll take a 15-minute break." We did. And as soon as came back, he said, "Mr. Beck, you can go home now." Well, you see, Mr. Beck did go home, but Mr. Beck came back the next day.
Mm.
And I sat right behind the defendant because I wanted to go out for lunch with the defendant and see what was going on. And I was right. The defendant said to me, I went out with the attorney. We discussed things. We came back into the courtroom. The judge asked the attorney, "Well, are you able to work together?" And the attorney said, "Well, Your Honor, based upon my time with the defendant, I would highly recommend a full psychiatric evaluation." Now, that's not what the defendant was expecting at all.
Mm.
So the defendant decided, through, I'm sure, some other considerations, that he was probably better off trying to defend himself.
Mm.
Okay, so when I was there talking to the defendant, he told me about Jack and Margie Flynn, and
Mm.
that's where it started. I now
Mm.
had two people who knew the law far better than I did, and they introduced me to something called the affidavit process, what I call the power of paper. And to any of the viewers on this broadcast, um, I have a special gift for them at the end that I'll explain later. But one of the things that that Flynn's taught me about is the power of paper, the ability to use an affidavit in order to get government to back off. Now, an affidavit is simply a notarized statement of facts that can be submitted to the court as evidence. Affidavit that we use, we send to an offending party, which in my case is almost government, almost always government. In some cases, it can be a corporation. It most definitely could be to another individual, but I've only used it basically with government. So when I put an affidavit together, I specify in the first paragraph their lawful responsibility to answer it. You see, if you send them a letter, they can just put it in the trash. But when you send them an affidavit that says they have a responsibility to answer, and then at the end of the affidavit, I specify you have 30 days in order to answer. Otherwise, everything in it can be used against you in any court in America. Wait a minute. I don't send a letter, I send an affidavit. I don't send an affidavit to an agency. I send an affidavit to the guy at the top of the agency. If he doesn't answer, then he has to answer with another affidavit. You can't just send me a letter, although they try that, but that letter doesn't have any weight in the courtroom. They have to rebut what I've given them with another affidavit. If they don't, then if I go through the court in the proper way, I can bring the affidavit in as evidence against the other party. And they don't want that to happen. So what they often do is they just, you played cards before, they fold. They just give up. They just walk away. And interestingly, about 1 or 2 years after, I want to get the sequence right, I got another rolling stop. Well, this time I wrote the deputy sheriff a nice letter. Now, why am I writing a letter? Well, because my friends are Christians, and they say, well, you want to treat people the way you want to be treated. So the deputy sheriff doesn't understand the law in this particular instance, so you need to let him know in a nice way. The letter's a nice way, but my letter is sent with return receipt request. They have to sign for it. Well, they're not used to getting letters from people they give tickets to. They're certainly not used to having to sign for one of these letters. But I'm sure he read it and he said, well, this is a bunch of junk. I don't know, probably threw that away. Well, 30 days later, I send him the affidavit. He doesn't throw that away. He knows enough about law to know that, wait a minute, I have to answer this thing. So now, Miracle, they never tell you why you win, but I just have to surmise that what he did is he sent it upstairs to legal. And some legal eagle up there came back and said, basically, I just let him go. It's not worth it. We got all these other people out there. Just let him go. I'm pretty sure the legal eagle didn't say to the deputy, this guy's got us. No. So 3 months later, I'm in court. I walk in and I'm thinking, I wonder if he's going to, yep, there he is. The deputy comes in, he kind of looks my way, and then he gives a piece of paper to the judge. And the judge says, Mr. Beck, are you here? Yeah, I'm here. And he said, well, your case has been dropped. You can go home. Now, by the way, when I go to court, I always take a witness with me. You never know what shenanigans going to be played in the courtroom, so you always have to have somebody who can back up what you say is true. So, wow, I'm walking out of there and saying, well, that's a $240 fine. Now, by the way, rolling stop is about the least fine in the state of California. And it starts at $240. Now, Miracle, I didn't find out where you live, but California, I want you to know, we have the highest everything. We have the highest unemployment rates. We have the highest taxes. Our gasoline tax is the highest in the country, and our fines are the highest. Nobody can match us when it comes to taxing. So it's a $240 fine for a rolling stop. Now, one of the things about these tickets is that I learned there has to be a victim. There's no victim in a rolling stop. That's what we call positive law, where under common law, we have sanctions if we step against somebody else's person, property, or their reputation. But in positive law, hey, we're going to tell you what we want you to do. And if you don't do it, there's going to be a fine. Wow. Thomas Jefferson wrote about that in the Declaration of Independence. He wrote these words. He, speaking of the king, has combined with others, speaking of Parliament and the colonial governors, he has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. That's not the United States Constitution he's talking about, because that came 11 years after the Declaration. He's talking about the common law. That's what ruled the American colonies, just simple common law of England. And it goes on to say, has subjected us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of, here it comes, pretended legislation. Pretended legislation. Oh, that's legislation that's not really lawful. That's legislation that's passed by different legislatures. And as long as the people succumb to it, as long as the people don't review it and know what's going on, it's valid. And that's what a traffic stop is. It's totally valid for people who don't know the law. A statute is not law unless it's constitutional. They can pass all kinds of laws, statutes. And as my friend, I have many friends that are in law enforcement. One of my best friends in law enforcement once said to me, I don't know anything about the Constitution. I only know statutes and penal codes. But the Constitution is the higher law. God's law is the highest law. Our Constitution is lower than God's law. And all statutes have to be in compliance with the Constitution or they're not laws. But wait, they are. They're pretended legislation. It sounds right. But the question is, under common law, who's the victim? If there's no victim, there's no crime. If there's no crime, there should be no action. And that's what has to be brought to the attention of all kinds of government officials. Now, I've been since the traffic ticket, I've used it 4 more times. And it's worked every time. 2 of them during COVID. We had I always like to bring this out. California has 58 counties. Every one of those counties has a sheriff. Over 40 of those sheriffs think our governor is crazy. And they don't like him. And they basically say to the governor, that's not constitutional. We're not going to do it. We're not going to enforce that. I don't know what's happening where you lived during COVID, but out here we had a governor that wanted us to He went so far as he didn't want us singing in church.
I did hear about that for y'all.
Our sheriff's a Christian, and he said, I'm not enforcing these laws. I'm not going to go into churches and count people and see how close they're standing next to people. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to arrest anybody for not wearing a mask. I'm not going to close down businesses, restaurants. I'm not going to do that. Now the governor's telling that's what we're supposed to do, but see the sheriff, smart guy, he says, you know what? The governor doesn't pass any laws. He's supposed to enforce laws. The legislature in California has not passed any laws pertinent to that. He's just doing his own thing and seeing how many people are going to act like timid squirrels and run back into their hole. So our sheriff said no, but we had a chief medical officer who has all these minions of these people who run around town telling people what to do. And he started telling his people to go out and get these restaurants to close down. So myself and a few other people put a little affidavit together and sent it to the doctor. And we were blessed by a guy named David Martin out in Massachusetts who had been doing 20 years of research, investigation into Mr. Fauci and the government agencies like the FDA and these organizations. And he had spotted something decade ago, and then he just been following up on it. And what he gave us was something called the Fauci dossier, which basically was saying that federal regulations require that before you can mandate anything along the lines of isolating people, quarantining, closing down businesses, you have to have first a independent review board created that investigates it, and everybody on the board can not have any monetary interest in the outcome. The United States government, the California government, none of them followed the law. They just started making everybody feel panicky. You know, we got COVID, people are dying left and right, the world's going to end. And a lot of people just fell into that. But David Martin didn't. We got the Fauci dossier. We put it on the desk of this medical officer, and a few weeks later, we hit him with the affidavits. And miracle, it worked. When the doctor refused to do anything, we were ready for that. We put his affidavit in a letter with another affidavit to each of the 5 supervisors in the county of Riverside. And we said, this guy is breaking the law. This guy is breaking federal law. What are you going to do about him? Because if you don't do something about it, everything in my affidavit can be used against you in a court of law. So see, we're just moving it up. The lower guy wouldn't do it, so he went to his boss, and the boss said, by God, they're going to get us. So the next thing I know is that the medical officer resigns and ends up moving to Australia. I didn't want him to go to Australia. Actually, I only wanted him to repent. I didn't want him to lose his job. But he kept stiff-necking us, and he ended up being removed. Well, that was COVID-1. COVID-2 was Best Buy said I had to wear a mask to go into their store. I said, well, I don't have to wear a mask to come into your store. Well, yeah, you have to wear a mask. No, I don't. Well, it's a law. No, it's not. It's a mandate from the governor. You can't enforce mandates. Oh, yeah, we can. Okay. So we put an affidavit together. Now, this is the only time that I've done it against somebody who's not in government. This was a corporation. Now, Best Buy is located outside of Minneapolis. That's where their corporate offices are. So in this case, I had to drive down to Glendale and put it on their receiving agent. And that was sent over to Minneapolis eventually. and I sued them in small claims court. Now, small claims court is a very interesting place because it only costs $50 to get the case heard, and they have to show up, and they can't send an attorney. Somebody from the company has to show up. So they showed up. They sent a store manager over there. And the poor guys just said, hey, you know what? We put the sign up and that's all there is to it. Now, people say to me, well, did you win? Well, I wasn't after money. I was after the right to go into their store and to get them to stop doing something that's illegal. And, well, the judge, well, she wasn't really a judge, she was a commissioner. She didn't have time to see my paperwork. So she was making a lot of mistakes. And I understand this about judges. Judges know a certain amount of law, like in small claims court, they understand how that system works. But when you bring something into a courtroom that's really way outside their pay level, they don't know how to handle it, and they make all kinds of mistakes. And she made several mistakes. So that's okay, because the end result was that within a couple of weeks, and I don't think it was just us in California, because Best Buys across the country, and they were all stopping with the mask stuff. But I did what I thought I should do, and I often say, what would the world be like if everybody's doing what I'm doing? What if a small percentage of Americans were doing what I'm doing? Which is always treating my opponent with respect and kindness. Never be abrasive, never challenge authority unwisely. I respect the judge. She's making all kinds of mistakes. I don't call her stupid. That could put me in jail. But okay, so when it was all over, I ended up sending an affidavit to the judge and pointing out to her what she did wrong. And she didn't answer, and I didn't expect her to answer it. All I know is if I ever go to court again and she's, oh, you're walking in here? I'm sorry. Here's the affidavit I gave you 3 years ago. You admitted publicly that you don't keep your oath of office. So therefore, step down. And that, by the way, is a critical part of the affidavit, is that you're dealing with a government agent, a government official who has taken an oath to defend not only the federal Constitution, but also the state Constitution. It's binding on them. And when we, the people, require them to live inside their oath of office, they start a learning process. Our government is the government that we deserve. We are a very ignorant people. We are a people who are apathetic. And I would even say this. I know we have that wonderful song, our national anthem, Home of the Free and the Land of the Brave. Now, the brave part gets me. I don't know how brave we are anymore. If we're afraid to go to court in order to stand up for our rights, when George Washington and his troops were freezing and losing fingers and toes at Valley Forge, those were the men who were brave. Not so much us today. And I fight this battle largely because I remember those men. Those are the guys who, they're fighting a war for 7 years, and a lot of times they weren't getting paid. They were doing it out of their heart and conscience. And I'm very, very opposed to war, Miracle. I don't like it at all. I lost some good friends in Vietnam. And what a tragic, stupid war. And that's why, one of the reasons that I do what I do, because I just feel like it's a testimony to my love for my country and my fellow men, and especially those people in the past who fought to give us the greatest system of government in the history of the world. and it's my responsibility, to a certain extent, to lay down my comfort. I haven't had to lay down my life yet. I haven't even gone hungry yet. But it's inconvenient. I don't like going to court. But my conscience tells me as a Christian I have to do what God's showing me to do. And I also have to try and teach more Christians this is part of being us. This is part of our job, is to fight for liberty. The Bible says where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. Well, if we're looking at a country and we don't see that much liberty anymore, we've got to ask ourselves, what can I do? What more can I do? And the reason why I'm on this program is because the affidavit process is what any of us can do. It's really quite simple. The gift that I'm going to give at the end is simply a template for the affidavit. It has a critically important first paragraph and the critically important last paragraph. The body of the paragraph depends upon the situation. I was back in South Dakota in 2002 visiting my mother, and I got involved in another traffic situation. Only this time I had to go to court, and wait a minute, I am not going to stay over 3 extra days. I've got to get back to California. So I stood up the judge. I didn't show up. Well, I didn't think too much of it because I'm probably not going to go back to South Dakota, and it's no big deal. I'm living in California. But I went to buy a gun one time, and they say, can't sell you a gun. Why not? Well, you've got a bench warrant in South Dakota. Oh, of course. I didn't show up, so they issued a bench warrant. Well, that was about the time that I was learning about the affidavit process. So I recognized, well, here again, the situation in South Dakota was, there's no victim. There's no victim. Why am I in court if there's no victim? So I put an affidavit together and I spelled it out. And I sent it to the presiding judge. Now, this is like 15 years later. I don't know who the judge was when I was supposed to stand in front of, but I sent it to the presiding judge, and after 30 days, I got nothing back. Well, I know what to do. I put the affidavit into an envelope with another affidavit. This one is made out to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2 months later, the 15-year-old bench warrant was gone. Gone. Because I followed due process. I did what the law says I have to do. You have to notify your adversary. It's a common sense, common law, Christian thing to do. If you have a problem with somebody, you're supposed to go to them and get it resolved. It sounds like Matthew 18 to me. Yeah. So I did what I was supposed to do, and I got what I deserved, was I got the freedom to live without a bench warrant on me. I've only got one other, I'll mention the one other case. We had well, when I learned this, I went to both my state assemblywoman and my state senator. And miracle, I always ask government officials this question. According to the Declaration of Independence, what is the purpose of government? Now, you would think that somebody who's in government for like 10 years would know what's the purpose of government. But both of these elected officials flunked. They didn't know the purpose of government. They always say, well, it's to protect the people. Well, no, that's not right, because if somebody's coming into my house at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can't count on the government to protect me. I'm going to have to try and do something on my own. That's not what the Declaration says. We have these cherished words: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, period. Now, I asked both people, what words come next? I'm not sure. I don't know. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to safeguard my rights. Your job is not to pass statutes that trample on my rights. And 6 months later, she did. She's trying to pass a statute that would make my priest and every pastor in California a felon. For doing what? For providing counsel to some person who has voluntarily come to their office to discuss sexual dysphoria. Oh, yeah, somewhere somebody actually did go to a priest or a pastor and got some bad counsel or something and ended up committing suicide. Yeah, I could believe that could have happened, but that's not enough of a reason to pass a law like that that infringes upon my priest's right to speak the truth.
Hmm.
So we sent her an affidavit, and they pulled the bill. The bill, they just took it down because we hit them with the law. Now, what did it cost me? Well, it cost me some time. It cost me about $9 to send a certified letter affidavit. I do all my affidavits at the bank free. So it only cost me $9 in time.
Hmm.
And compared to what? Being in with George Washington for 3 cold months in 1777? No. It wasn't that much on my part. And this is how we can control government. It's
Hmm.
called the power of paper. That's the wonderful, wonderful country that we live in. I don't know of any other country. I've been interviewed by people in Nigeria, New Zealand, Poland, and Netherlands. And the first thing I'm always concerned about is, where's your audience? If your audience isn't in America, I don't know how much I can help you. Because I don't know if you can do this in Nigeria. I know you can't do it in New Zealand. But my job is to, my ministry, I guess now, is to simply communicate to people, and especially Christians, the responsibility. Let's get back to driving the bus. Rosa Parks wouldn't sit in the back of the bus. She said, I'm sitting right here, and you're going to have to move me. And because she had the guts to do that, a lot of good things happen. Now, I keep telling Christian people, we got to drive the bus. Deuteronomy 28 says, God wants us to be the head and not the tail. He doesn't want us sitting in the back of the bus. The country's going to be better off. The Bible says, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. Now, as Christians, we should live our lives in humility and in sacrifice and in constant repentance of our own sin. That's our job. But then we have to take up the mantle and do what God wants us to do to hold our government officials accountable. We have a wonderful sheriff, and I have friends who are patriots, and they say, well, he's not constitutional enough. And my response to them is, why should he stick his neck out any farther than he already has until he knows we have his back? There's not enough of us doing what we need to do. I wrote a book, it's yet to be published, entitled Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue. And it initially started just because I don't like violence, and I've recognized ways that police officers can handle their situation without undue violence. I even went to Detroit and rode with Dale Brown, who runs an agency, a security agency in Detroit, but he also trains police officers. And on Dale's website, he had 7 police officers in Detroit who all said the same thing. Why weren't we trained like this? Because if we'd been trained like this, there would be less people dead and there'd be less lawsuits against the city. And all Dale Brown does is teaches people how to treat, teaches law enforcement people how to use psychology and common sense and learn some martial arts techniques so you don't fear somebody coming at you with a knife. I always like to teach people, what is the common law? Here's a good example of common law. And I use this with police officers. A man is coming at you with a club or a knife. What are you trained to do? Well, I'm trained to put him down. You're trained to what? Put him down. Well, in most cases, that means you take out a gun and you shoot him. And where do you shoot him? You don't shoot him in the arm. You shoot him where he's probably not going to get up and where he's probably not going to live. That's how many police officers are trained. So I say to the police officer, does it matter to you who it is that's coming at you with a knife or a club? And immediately they're thinking, well, maybe he's talking about a woman, maybe he's talking about some minority person. And they say, no, it doesn't matter. I say, well, what if it's your own son? And then I pause. I don't say anything because it's up to them to answer the question. Would you still put the bullet in a position that would probably take your own son's life? Remember, that person coming at you is somebody else's son. He might be somebody else's daddy. He might be somebody's husband or wife. Somebody's going to be tragically affected more than likely by putting him down for good. But when you know martial arts and you know 10 different ways to disarm this guy, and you practice it as Dale Brown, his security officers go through 1 hour of martial arts training every day. Every day. So they can take a knife out of somebody's hands as easy as you and I can tie our shoes because they just practice. So when you have that degree of confidence, somebody's coming in with a club or a knife, you're not going to pull out a gun and shoot them because you know how to disarm them without it. Using proper psychology, you don't necessarily even have to go that far. If you just treat people the way they need to be treated. Here's another example. This is from an actual law enforcement buddy of mine, the same guy who said, I only know statutes and penal code. But he's a wonderful Christian guy. And he's out, he's got a call that 2 patrol officers have stopped some guy and the guy won't get out of his car. Well, one of the guys wants to smash his windows and bring him out. And my sheriff friend says, well, I'm 2 minutes away. Let me come over there. So he came over and he said, you guys stand here. Let me go talk to him. So he went over and talked to the guy. And he said, just a minute, I'll be right back. He went back to his car because it was a hot day. And he got a plastic bottle of cold water. And he said, hey, I want to roll down the window and give you this water because I want you to just stop and think about what's going to happen here. Because if you don't get out of that car, they're going to bust open the windows. And then it's going to be like whatever's going to happen plus $500 to fix your windows. So I'm just going to give you a couple minutes to think about it. I'm going to go over there and talk to those guys. And I just want you to get out of the car. Yeah, after 2 minutes, the guy got out of the car, put his hands up on the top of the automobile, and they arrested him. They found out, well, he has a warrant. He knew he was going to be arrested. He knew he was going to be taken into custody, and he fears going back to jail. and he's acting in a panic. But if you give the guy a couple minutes to think through the situation, the violence was unnecessary. He gave it up because he had time to think. The police officers weren't in any rush. They didn't have any emergencies they had to go to. And you're stopping the guy because of some traffic violation. Really? We're going to have a violent altercation because he did a rolling stop or he did a... No. Come on. Let's use some common sense. My sheriff friend says, I never do high-speed chases. I'm not going to chase people through town in order to give them a ticket or maybe arrest them. No, I got his driver's license. I got his license plate. I'll know where he lives and we'll go get him in the morning when it's not going to be a problem. If he's got a possible warrant, we will serve the warrant later. We're not going to put people in danger by chasing him through town. And those are the things that I've learned through the years by just hanging out with a lot of cops. Most cops are really decent guys. As a school teacher, most of the teachers I worked with were really decent people. But we had some bad teachers too. The difference is a bad teacher can't kill you. A bad cop can. So cops have really got to be well trained. And I don't think our police officers are always well trained. I think they're getting better training now than they did 20 years ago. But we also have another problem. We've been fighting wars for so long that we have some kind of a war mentality that we bring back into our culture. And people are concerned about all the gun violence we have in the United States. And I think, well, if we'd stop all the wars that our people are being sent off to, and a lot of these people come back and they end up being law enforcement people. We have a culture of violence. We send our people around the world and we promote violence in other countries, Iraq, Iran, Ukraine, all over the world. It doesn't have to be that way. I've talked a lot, Miracle.
But that's all right. I think, it's definitely informative, everything you said. I'm right there with you in regards to the observation that Americans, we just don't know what we have or we don't appreciate what we have, and things of that nature. And it's unfortunate, but I think, you shed some light at least of some action that we can take in different areas, some things that can be improved in these different systems. And so I just let wisdom flow. You know what I'm saying?
Well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you for standing and whatnot. As a man of God as well, because all of this is needed across the board. We do need more brave men of God, in particular. In all kinds of forms of authority, I believe, because we see what it looks like. And I just think just to even the playing field out, because
Yeah.
the good and the bad, like we know there's always going to be good and bad, but let us do more as believers, like you said. And so I think your mission is honorable, little Captain.
Hey, I got one more gem for you. I don't want to miss this one.
Okay.
I was in court on them. See, I do stupid things also. I don't like paying fines, or I know I didn't hurt anybody, so I failed to pay a fine for a rolling stop. And then I did another rolling stop, but now, they suspended my license.
Oh, no.
Now it's a misdemeanor, which I could go to jail for a year. Now they don't do that, but I could. And now I'm in a courtroom where I'm the defendant, and over there is the district attorney's assistant. And she's a lot higher up than a cop. So I'm arguing back and forth, and I objected to something that she did, and the judge ruled in my favor. Now, I know she didn't like that because she's going against a rookie. That's a pro per. That's somebody who's not a lawyer, and they don't like to lose anything. But she was actually caught doing something wrong, and the judge reprimanded her. And then the judge said, "Well, Mr. Beck, you need to explain the rest of that to me." And I started, and he said, "Oh, stop." Now, I would have never learned this, even though I lost this case. I would have never learned this unless I had stood for my rights, because he's now going to give me one of the most important pieces of information that the audience needs to hear. He said, "Mr. Beck, you bring up some very valid points. Nevertheless, that is not why we are here today. You should have brought that up by a pre-trial motion." When people go into the courtroom and start arguing the Constitution, some judges will get upset very quickly. Other judges might let you go on for a while. But at the end of the day, they're going to say, it's irrelevant. What? How can the Constitution of the United States be irrelevant? Here's why. You are not in a common law courtroom. You are in a statutory jurisdiction courtroom. You don't have rights in a jurisdiction, a statutory jurisdiction. You only have privileges and immunities. If your audience would read the 14th Amendment, you'll find out, this is mind-boggling, the 14th Amendment establishes a new citizenship. You see, Black slaves did not have freedom until the Civil War. After the Civil War, we had some amendments added to the Constitution, and the 14th was one of them. And the 14th Amendment was granting to the slaves citizenship, statutory citizenship, a citizenship of privileges and immunities, but not rights. Why would it say you have privileges and immunities? We're people of rights. Oh, no. You are now citizens of the United States. Most Americans would say, of course I'm a citizen of the United States. Oh boy. In law, every word has a specific definition. I see your furrowed brow, Miracle. I know this is a little hard to grab hold of, but at least your audience will hear it and maybe start doing a little investigation. Or they can get in touch with me later and we can learn more together. But what established is, when you become a United States citizen, you become a citizen of the federal government. And they were granting this form of citizenship to Black people. Now, since that time, white people, Hispanics, Asians, everybody's a United States citizen. Well, if you're going to be a United States citizen and you're going to go into the United States federal courts without any common law rights, you're going to have to play according to their rules. And their rules are still pretty good. You're not treated like you'd be treated in communist countries. You still have a right to defense, and you got a lot of opportunities to bring forth witnesses and subpoena for evidence. There's a lot of things you can still do. But you can be called into court for doing something where there's no victim. And that's where I don't want to live. I want to live along according to God's law, which God's law says I should not do harm to anybody else. And as long as I don't do harm to anybody else, I shouldn't be in their courtroom. That's under the common law. So what the judge taught me is, if you're going to argue the Constitution, then you have to bring it in at the beginning. You have to move for a motion for a hearing on jurisdiction, and you make the case that I'm under common law jurisdiction. I'm not accepting statutory jurisdiction, and in many cases, the judge has probably never heard this. That's why what I'm working on right now is an affidavit that would go to every judge in the county, so that they would, hey, you guys had 30 days to rebut this. I think this is what the law is, and we've been operating under this foreign jurisdiction for a long time. And hey, if I'm wrong, please correct me. I just want to live according to the truth. But this is the way I see it. And nobody forced you to be a judge. Nobody forced you to be a legislator. Nobody forced you to be a sheriff. You wanted the job. You ran for the job. Well, here's part of your job description. Explain to me the law as I see it. Don't tell me to go pay some high-priced attorney to tell me. You wanted the job. Here's your responsibility is to answer me. Because if you don't answer me, then I can assume everything in my affidavit is true, and it can be used against you in your courtroom, judge. Whoa. That's going to get their attention. And this is what we, the people, have to do if we're going to bring this government back under control, because it is out of control. What's going on in this country is it's just not what this country was established to be. I'm not standing alone. I work with other people. I would put a plug for tacticalcivics.com, tacticalcivics.com. And there's an 11-minute video on there that explains what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring back the American vision prior to the Civil War. The Civil War changed everything. And every time we have a war, when we come out of it, we have less liberty than we had before the war.
Well, I mean, we got to bring you back, Mr. Kirk, or excuse me, Captain Kirk, because I don't know if we didn't learn this in civics or what, or social stuff. I don't know. Like, we didn't get the education. You definitely have educated us tonight, and I really do appreciate you, stopping by and giving us this wisdom. I'm gonna let us, let it soak in and let it marinate and everything. But I definitely want to give you the chance to share any other places that the people can reach out to you, where to look out for your book and things like that, and anything else you want to share with us before you go.
Okay. At the end, you can put a couple of places where they can go to get in touch with me, right?
Yes, sir.
I never did find out, where are you located?
Georgia.
Georgia. Okay, so that's a little out of my time zone. But right now, basically at 7 o'clock my time, 10 o'clock your time on Thursdays, I do a Zoom call. So people can come on the Zoom and talk to me about anything they want to talk about. So you'll give them that Zoom ID so they can come. And then as to the gift, we're gonna have them go to affidavitsecrets.com/miracle. So we know it's coming from Miracle.
All right.
All right. And
Nice.
you go there and you put in your phone number, and you'll get text messages. What's happening is every other day people get a executive summary of one chapter from my book, Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue. And you also are aware of how you can get a 50% discount on my course entitled The Power of Paper. So you can go through the course and understand a lot of what I've talked about here and then even more. And so that's pretty much it. We have the free gift, we have the offering, the discount, and we have the book that you can, because it's not published yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for I'd have a lady, I've never met her, but she's a gifted writer, and I want her to kind of help me make it sound better because I have a hero in my book. Her name's Maricela. She's great. And I want a female take on making Maricela come more alive before we publish the book. And that's it. I'm done.
Well, awesome. I really do appreciate chit-chatting with you, listening to you. I think, again, you're full of wisdom and things that we definitely need to look into as Americans. So I hope everyone took down those gems and check out those free resources. And we thank you so much again for you visiting the GSL Talk Show.
It's been a great pleasure to be here. It's been a great pleasure just looking at your smile. Oh, what a smile. Thank you so much. Just light up the whole screen. Good job.
Oh,
God
thank
bless you, my sister.
Yes. Yes, sir. God bless you as well. Thank you so much for watching the GSL Talk Show, and thank you to Captain Kirk for joining us tonight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and check out his endeavors, y'all. Get those free resources, and look, let's take some actions, okay? Have a good night.